On January 28, 1976, a guy named Daniel Halsey was born in a small town in Oregon called Estacada. Now, Daniel's family owned a farm, which meant he got used to waking up early to help with the daily farm work. Growing up that way made Daniel tough. He learned to handle pressure, and the hard work gave him real strength. His parents raised him with solid values, and his family was always close-knit. They believed in sticking together, working as a team just to cover their daily expenses. Family was always priority number one. In high school, Daniel started to really come into his own. He had a big personality, and his smile could light up a room, making him instantly likable to everyone around him. You couldn't meet him without feeling a connection right away. The guy was special, charming in a way that didn't seem real. Everything he did well. He was easygoing, and people loved being around him. During his high school years, Daniel learned to play both the piano and the drums. He became known among his classmates as Drum Dan because of his talent. On top of all that, he was a tech whiz, excelling at anything related to computers and technology. Daniel was also good-looking, athletic, and had a sharp sense of style. A lot of the guys wanted to be like him. That's who Daniel was, but as we know, perfect lives don't last forever. In 1994, during his sophomore year, he faced his first real heartbreak. His father, who he was incredibly close to, passed away suddenly due to a brain aneurysm. It was a devastating blow for Daniel, just as it would be for any young guy who needed his dad's guidance. But Daniel, just like the rest of his family, managed to pull himself together and keep pushing forward, even with the heavy pain of losing his father. By 1995, exactly 1 year after his father's death, Daniel graduated high school. He moved to Salem, Oregon, to pursue a degree in music. He stayed in Salem for a while and later enrolled in another university to get his MBA. While living in Salem, Daniel met a woman named Elizabeth Schrock. She was hardworking and ambitious, always giving her best at everything. At the time, Elizabeth was a fashion model, and when they started dating, they were like a Hollywood couple, beautiful, successful, and talented. In 2001, shortly after they got married, Daniel had already earned his MBA. Within 5 years, they became parents to 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. They moved to Las Vegas because Daniel got a job offer there and founded his own IT company. He was brilliant in the tech field, and his business quickly took off, attracting clients from all over Vegas and nearby areas. After a few years of living in Las Vegas, Elizabeth's ambitions grew even bigger. She decided to enter politics. In 2010, she made the bold decision to run for the Nevada State Senate. This meant she needed to launch a strong campaign, which would take up a lot of her time, leaving her little room to focus on her family. At the same time, Daniel was swamped with his own business, working full-time to support his family since his income was the main source. Yet, he also needed to support his wife's campaign while playing the role of both mom and dad for their kids. Elizabeth told Daniel, "I really want to run for Senate, but it'll put a lot on your shoulders. Can you handle it?" Without hesitation, Daniel replied, "I'm all in. I'll support you in every way you need." He was genuinely excited for her and had no problem stepping up, even if it came at the cost of his own comfort and personal time. Elizabeth soon dove headfirst into her campaign, doing everything she could to win a seat in the Nevada State Senate. Meanwhile, Daniel stayed home, taking care of the kids, playing with them, taking them to parks, and tucking them into bed every night. After the kids were asleep, he'd stay up late managing his business from his laptop, working either in the living room or the dining room. All of Daniel's hard work and sacrifices paid off when, on November 2nd of that same year, Elizabeth won her campaign, running on a platform focused on family values, integrity, and ethics. She became the youngest woman ever elected to the Nevada State Senate at just 27 years old. The whole state was stunned, and people were in awe of her achievement. Everyone knew Elizabeth was headed for greatness. She was set to become a political star, and it was clear to those close to the family that Daniel was her biggest supporter and cheerleader. He was incredibly proud of his wife. But, as you might have guessed, life wasn't going to stay perfect for this family. Things were about to take a dark turn and unravel completely. Not long after Elizabeth won her elections, Daniel noticed that she had become suspiciously close to a man named Tiger Hill, a former golfer and a political colleague outside of Elizabeth's circle. When Daniel realized that his wife was frequently texting Tiger, he decided to confront him directly, asking him to stop contacting his wife and to leave his family alone. Despite Daniel's confrontation, the messages and calls between Elizabeth and Tiger continued. In October 2011, less than a year after Elizabeth took office, Daniel discovered that his wife and Tiger had gone on a long business trip together. This was when Daniel fully realized that Elizabeth was having an affair. When Elizabeth returned home, she went to their bedroom to unpack. Daniel followed her in and confronted her, accusing her of cheating. The argument escalated quickly, but despite the shouting and the heated emotions, there was no physical violence. At some point, Elizabeth screamed for him to stop, and Daniel immediately stopped and left the room. In the following days, Daniel and Elizabeth attended counseling sessions at their church, showing that they were trying to repair their relationship and save their marriage from collapsing. However, on October 21st, just 5 days after their major argument, Elizabeth went to the police and accused Daniel of inappropriately touching her during the confrontation. Daniel was shocked by Elizabeth's accusation. He was charged with gross and indecent conduct, which refers to unwanted physical contact with another person. This type of charge is common, especially among people who drink and get into trouble at bars or nightclubs. The accusation is often made without solid proof, and in many cases, it can be false. The police don't need much evidence to make an arrest, just someone's word is enough. After being convicted of gross indecent conduct, Daniel was sentenced to 6 months in jail and was ordered to undergo anger management counseling. He was also registered as a sex offender. Shortly after his conviction, Daniel filed for divorce. Both he and Elizabeth were fighting to gain custody of their children. Since Elizabeth was a senator and had built her election campaign on family values and upholding high moral standards, rumors started spreading rapidly. There were accusations that she had cheated on her husband with Tiger Hill, and as a result, her family fell apart. She accused her husband of indecent conduct, and their children's lives were thrown into turmoil. Although Elizabeth denied the affair and claimed she was innocent, the mounting pressure, hatred, and criticism forced her to resign from the Senate in February 2012. The divorce was finalized later that year. Due to Elizabeth's lawsuit, Daniel lost custody of his children, even though he had been their primary caretaker for years. Elizabeth was granted custody and immediately left Nevada with the children, moving to Alaska. Shortly after arriving in Alaska, Elizabeth married Tiger. Daniel was devastated. The life he had worked so hard to build had crumbled in an instant, and what hurt him the most was being separated from the children he loved deeply. Even if he wanted to see them, it was nearly impossible. Despite the heartache and devastation, much like when his father died in 1994, Daniel tried to pick up the pieces and move forward. In the following years, Daniel focused all his time and energy on his work in the computer field, while also making every effort to see his children whenever possible. However, due to his strained relationship with Elizabeth, it was incredibly difficult for him to spend time with them. Eventually, Daniel met a woman named Bogdana, and the two got married. His family felt that Daniel's life was finally getting back on track. Around this time, Daniel also became very active on social media, sharing positive and uplifting posts that showcased his warm personality. He frequently posted about taking care of the people around you and being a good person, and he uploaded numerous videos with his 3 children, whom he adored. They were the most important thing in his life. However, despite his cheerful and optimistic online presence, Daniel's personal life took another hit when he and Bogdana separated in 2019, leaving him alone once again. His Instagram posts during the time of his divorce remained positive and hopeful, but if you looked closely at his photos, there was a noticeable sadness in his eyes. Just as Daniel's life seemed to be falling apart again, something wonderful happened. His ex-wife, Elizabeth, decided to leave Alaska and move back to Nevada, settling in Las Vegas. She made the move not to rekindle her relationship with Daniel but because she and the children loved Las Vegas and wanted to live there again. Upon their return, Daniel suddenly found himself able to see his children frequently, and he was overjoyed and excited. In late 2020, Daniel's youngest daughter, Sierra, who was 16 at the time, decided to move in with her father. Legally, she was supposed to live with her mother, and Elizabeth strongly objected to the arrangement, but despite this, Sierra chose to live with Daniel in August of that year. Since Sierra was living with him, Daniel decided to go to court to see if he could gain custody of her from Elizabeth, as Sierra was the only minor among their 3 children. He argued in court that life at Elizabeth's home was toxic and unhealthy for the children. Daniel explained that Sierra had been struggling with mental health issues and needed professional help, which he had already arranged for her after she moved in with him. Daniel even presented a letter he claimed Sierra had written, stating that her mental health had improved since moving in with her father and that it would be best for her to stay with him. Elizabeth, however, countered all of Daniel's claims, accusing him of being a liar and an unfit father. She suggested that the letter Daniel submitted was not written by Sierra, implying that it was forged. The judge, clearly frustrated with the constant conflict between Daniel and Elizabeth, warned them that their ongoing issues were creating a harmful environment for their children, particularly Sierra. In early 2021, with no resolution between Daniel and Elizabeth in sight, the judge ordered Daniel to return Sierra to her mother's home, as she was legally supposed to be living with Elizabeth. Daniel took Sierra back to her mother's house, but later that night, Sierra snuck out of her mother's home and returned to her father's. The custody battle over Sierra continued for months, with Sierra insisting that she wanted to live with her father, despite the court order and her mother's objections. The strange and tragic events of April 2021 unfolded in a way no one could have predicted. On the morning of April 8, multiple withdrawals were made from Daniel's bank account at different ATMs across Las Vegas. Daniel shared this bank account with his second ex-wife, Bogdana, as neither had closed the account after their divorce. Both would receive notifications whenever a transaction occurred. However, these withdrawals weren't made by Daniel or Bogdana, raising concerns of potential fraud. The bank flagged the activity and sent alerts to both of them. When Bogdana received the fraud alert, she knew she hadn't made the withdrawals and tried to contact Daniel. But Daniel didn't respond to her calls or messages, which was unusual. Growing worried, she reached out to Daniel's mother, Christine, as the two of them spoke almost daily. After speaking with Bogdana, Christine attempted to contact Daniel but received no reply. She then tried to get in touch with her granddaughter, Sierra, who also didn't answer at first. Eventually, Sierra responded, explaining that her father's phone was being repaired, and assured Christine that everything was fine, promising that Daniel's phone would be back in working order by the next day. Christine felt slightly relieved but couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, especially since Sierra's message seemed a little out of character. The next day, as the hours passed without hearing from Daniel, Christine's worry deepened. She contacted Sierra again, asking her to call her father using her phone so that Christine could talk to him directly. Sierra didn't call, and instead sent a message explaining that her father was in the shower. At this point, Christine knew something wasn't right but still wasn't sure what was going on. Desperate for answers, Christine contacted a family friend, Becky Newman, who was not only Daniel's close friend but also the owner of the property where Daniel lived. She asked Becky to check on Daniel. Becky agreed but said she wouldn't be able to get there for a few hours due to prior commitments. Christine, although anxious, waited. By 1:46 p.m., Christine could no longer bear the wait and called the police, asking them to enter her son's house.
But nobody can get a hold of him, and then his work called, and they can't get a hold of him, and it's really, he just doesn't act like that.
However, just minutes after Christine's call, Becky and a friend arrived at Daniel's house before the police did. They noticed Daniel's car was missing, but that didn't ease their concern. After knocking several times with no response, Becky tried the front door and found it unlocked. She and her friend cautiously entered the house. Within minutes, they rushed out of the house, visibly shaken, and immediately called the police, barely able to explain what they had just seen. To understand what terrified Becky and her friend, we need to rewind 24 hours and look at things from another perspective. Security cameras had captured two individuals, a young man and a girl, making withdrawals at various ATMs around Las Vegas, using Daniel's bank card. The transactions that had triggered the fraud alert were now caught on tape. Later that day, these same individuals were seen on surveillance footage entering a local grocery store called Winco, where they used Daniel's card to purchase various items. Afterward, they went to another store, Home Depot, and were once again recorded on camera. Once their shopping was done, the pair headed back to Daniel's house and stayed the night. The next morning, at around 10:20 a.m., Daniel's car was seen leaving Las Vegas. This happened just hours before Becky and her friend would make their terrifying discovery at his house. When the police finally arrived at Daniel's home, they found Becky and her friend pale and shaken on the sidewalk. After briefly speaking with them, the officers entered the house to see for themselves. What they found was so shocking, they couldn't make sense of it right away. 4 days later, on April 13th, police in Salt Lake City, Utah, arrested the two individuals who had been caught on camera using Daniel's card, the same young man and girl seen on surveillance footage. They were found on a bus in Salt Lake City. After searching their belongings, including their phones, police uncovered a video the pair had recorded in the previous days. This video would explain the gruesome discovery made at Daniel's house.
I don't know what to say.
Welcome back to our YouTube channel. After
Day
murdering, Day 3 after murdering somebody.
Wow! Don't put that on the camera.
It was worth it.
And we had...
The shocking twist. The girl in the video was none other than Daniel's 16-year-old daughter, Sierra Halseth. The young man, her boyfriend, was 18-year-old Aaron Guerrero. Together, they had murdered Daniel. The exact details of what transpired in Daniel's home on April 8 remain unclear, but here's what investigators believe happened. After Aaron and Sierra had withdrawn money from the ATMs, they headed to the Winco grocery store, where they purchased gloves, towels, disposable clothes, bleach, a saw blades, pepper spray, lighters, and other similar items. They then went to Home Depot to buy more tools before returning to Daniel's house. It is believed that Daniel, who adored his children and never imagined they would harm him, was caught completely off guard. He likely didn't suspect any danger when Sierra and Aaron arrived at his home. In his mind, he was surrounded by loved ones. Tragically, this sense of security was shattered when his own daughter and her boyfriend turned on him. What exactly happened inside the house that day remains speculative, but the brutal nature of the crime is certain. The result was 70 stab wounds on Daniel's body, most of them to the back of his head. During this brutal attack, they put Daniel in a sleeping bag, laying him on his right side in the middle of the living room, then poured gasoline on him and lit him on fire. It's unclear at which point Daniel died, whether it was from the beating, the stabbing, or the burning, and how long he resisted. But one thing is certain, Daniel lived, even if for a brief moment, seeing his little daughter killing him with her own hands, remembering her as a child in his arms from days past. The father died. Then she and her lover took knives out of their pockets, in addition to the saw, and tried to cut the body into small pieces. Unfortunately, they were unable to do so, so they threw the knives and the saw in the middle of the room. The room contained some remains of Daniel's flesh. Aaron and Sierra then tried to destroy and hide all the evidence that could incriminate them at the crime scene. They wiped everything down with chlorine or bleach, but of course, they couldn't eliminate all traces. As a result, they burned the entire house, along with everything inside it, to destroy all evidence. At that time, Christine sent a text to Sierra, asking her to talk to Daniel. Sierra replied that Daniel was in the shower and couldn't speak right now. Meanwhile, Sierra and Aaron were trying to burn down the house, but the fire wasn't strong enough or big enough to engulf the entire place. The fire slightly burned parts of the house but didn't spread. They thought the house would be completely consumed, destroying all the evidence. They left everything behind as it was, including Daniel's charred and burnt body, and took off in Daniel's dark blue Nissan. Around 10:20 a.m., they left Las Vegas. The only reason the police caught Aaron and Sierra in Salt Lake City a few days later was because they boarded a bus without Aaron paying for his ticket. When the ticket officer asked the passengers for their tickets, Aaron didn't have one. When they took his name and ran it through their system, it showed that he was wanted by Las Vegas police. That's how they were caught. As for why Sierra betrayed the one man who would have loved her forever, her father, it all started during her parents' custody battle when she met Aaron and began dating him, falling madly in love with him. Aaron, too, seemed deeply in love with her. Somehow, Daniel found out that his daughter and her boyfriend were planning to run away secretly to Los Angeles. When Daniel heard about it, he told his ex-wife Elizabeth, and they both informed Aaron's parents about the plan. The parents all agreed to stop the kids from running away. They separated them and prevented them from seeing each other, believing it was in their best interest. In 2021, both parents worked to keep Sierra and Aaron apart. Even though all the parents were united in this decision, Sierra was living with her father at the time. She directed all her anger from this decision toward her father, Daniel. In April, she decided to kill him in order to get back with her boyfriend. Honestly, I don't know what to say. Daniel was truly unlucky. His father passed away, he tried to persevere, then his wife cheated on him, took his kids, and left him. He tried to rebuild his life, married another woman, but she, too, left him, and they divorced. He was broken. To be killed by someone you love and trust, especially your own daughter, that's the ultimate betrayal. Looking at Daniel's Instagram posts, you can see that he was a positive guy. Thousands of posts show him engaging, saying things like, "Be strong, be like a rock, never give up." He was always optimistic, even to the point where he would take himself out to dinner alone when no one was around. He didn't have anyone to go out with, no friends, no wife. He would go eat alone when he should have had friends or a partner by his side. At Daniel's funeral, his mother Christine, who was the one to notice his absence, spoke and said that Daniel had only 2 children, and that they did not consider Sierra part of the family. The family, who once loved Sierra, has disowned her forever. They requested the court to impose the maximum possible penalty on her and her boyfriend. In the end, Sierra Halseth and Aaron Guerrero were sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 22 or 20 years.
That is a total aggregate sentence of life in the Nevada Department of Corrections with the possibility of parole after 22 years.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.